Truly, I've been on quite the journey with War of the Rohirrim. After wading through 2 seasons of the festering pile of donkey feces that is Rings of Power, I was pretty excited at the prospect of this movie. Sure, it was an animated film, but it was still made by the same people who gave us Lord of the Rings, and... well, yeah, the Hobbit trilogy was a thing too, I guess. War of the Rohirrim was going to tell us the story of Helm Hammerhand, one of the mightiest heroes in Rohan's history. We were going to get battles, intrigue, rivalries, and epic shots of Middle-earth. Then that first trailer dropped and we learned the truth. The entire narrative was actually going to be built around Helm's daughter Hera, a character so thoroughly unimportant in Tolkien's original lore that he didn't even bother giving her a name.
It's a bold strategy, Cotton. Let's see if it pays off for him.
Brace yourselves, boys. Incoming girl boss. But what's the actual reality? Is War of the Rohirrim as bad as we all feared, or is it actually a decent but misunderstood attempt to tell a great story? Well, the answer is a bit of both, really. On the plus side, the world of Rohan is well realised, most of the major locations from the movie trilogy are present and correct, the voice acting is generally excellent, some of the battle scenes are decent, and the animation, although wildly inconsistent at times, does deliver some pretty impressive visuals. On the other hand, the plot borrows rather too liberally from the Two Towers. A lot of dialogue and scenes are basically just rehashes of stuff that we've seen before. The pacing is sluggish and the fights are so over the top that it feels like I'm watching an episode of Dragon Ball Z instead of Lord of the Rings. Hera is a lot less insufferable than most of the bitter revenge fantasies posing as strong female leads these days, but the script never really manages to overcome the fact that she's just an original character, awkwardly inserted into events and narratives where she doesn't belong, and the rest of the cast and storylines suffer as a result. In short, War of the Rohirrim is both better and worse than I expected, so saddle up lads because we're going to war! The story picks up about 2 centuries before the events of Lord of the Rings, and straight away it tries to cover its arse by having Miranda Otto explain that Hera was a great hero who did amazing things, but for some reason nobody remembers her now. Why? Don't know, and by the end of the movie I still didn't know because there's no way to logically resolve a plot hole like that. In the writing business, this is what we call lampshading. Anyway, Hera is the fiery and free-spirited daughter of the king, a bit of a tomboy who likes to go out riding by herself, dreams of a life of adventure and excitement, and is in no great hurry to settle down and get married. But then, oh no, a rival faction shows up to demand her hand in marriage, but she doesn't want to do it because she's not ready yet. You know, there's something very familiar about all this. Anyway, insults are hurled and a fight breaks out, and King Helm accidentally kills the rival king with a single punch to the face. His son Wolf swears vengeance and then leaves, only to return a few years later at the head of a massive army determined to destroy Rohan forever. Hera tells her dad that they should withdraw to the Hornburg where it's safe, but he's like, nah, it'll be fine, and decides to ride straight into open battle. But as it turns out, it's not fine, and when one of their top men betrays them, Helm loses his capital city, both of his sons, and is forced to retreat to the Hornburg with what's left of his army. You naughty, naughty boy, Helm. You should have listened to the young woman with absolutely no military experience who for some reason is better at strategic planning than a room full of men that have spent their whole lives fighting wars.
Fool of a took.
Oh yeah, and in case you're wondering, yes, the theme of Hera being right about everything and Rohan only winning once people start listening to her is laced through pretty much every major plot point in the movie. Thought I might as well set expectations with that one.
Girls get it done.
Anyway, they get to the Hornburg and Wolf's army puts the place under siege while he constructs the world's most impractically massive siege tower. I'm not kidding, man, this thing makes the Burj Khalifa look like a modest semi-detached bungalow in Norwich. Then the movie decides it's time for Helm to die so that he can make way for Hera, so he sacrifices himself in a pointless last stand that accomplishes nothing except to rob the defenders of a highly skilled, inspirational and experienced commander. And I just want to say, it always pisses me off in stories where characters give their lives in some heroic sacrifice that was totally unnecessary and could have been easily avoided, but it happens anyway because the writers just want them gone. Anyway, so it's time for Hera to take command and face off against Wolf, and naturally she comes up with a killer plan that destroys the siege tower before beating him in a fair fight, because fuck you, human biology. And before anyone chimes in with the whole, yeah well, Eowyn killed the Witch King and you didn't have a problem with that, drinker. Well, my smooth-brained associate, if you'd actually watched the movie, you'd know that Eowyn was was getting her ass kicked by the Witch King until Merry stabbed him in the leg and crippled him, which allowed her to deliver the coup de grace. Now don't get me wrong, she was brave as fuck to even stand her ground against an enemy like him, but the movie was under no illusions that she was some mighty warrior who could take down men twice her size. It played it straight and realistic, and as a result people could buy into it. War of the Rohirrim is a different sort of movie though, a modern movie that likes to pretend women are still viable contenders in medieval sword battles where speed, size and strength are the overriding factors. Anyway, wouldn't you know it, reinforcements led by an exiled prince that Hera was able to contact as part of her plan arrive at just the right moment to turn the tide and destroy what's left of Wolf's army. That's right, Hera's so damn good that she manages to fill the role of Theoden and Gandalf simultaneously in this movie. Anyway, she's decided she's had enough of the patriarchy, so she leaves to go off on her own adventures, and I guess everyone involved in this massive life-changing historical event suffers mass amnesia, which is the only way to explain why such an important figure would have been completely forgotten. And that's it, that's the end of War of the Rohirrim.
Fuck.
You know, one of the funny little lies being perpetuated about this movie by the legacy media is the notion that Tolkien somehow did Hera dirty by not mentioning her in his works, and that this movie is some kind of cosmic redemption arc for her, as if she was a fully formed, fleshed out character struggling to escape the creative prison that he'd placed her in, instead of what she actually was, an irrelevant footnote in a much larger story, so comprehensively unimportant that she wasn't even given a name because she didn't need one. And I think it says a lot about modern Hollywood that they're so desperate to find their next girl boss that they'd trawl the very depths of Middle-earth history to find one that they could pull to the surface and turn into something that she was never meant to be, instead of just writing the fucking story that Tolkien intended to tell. All throughout the movie, you can practically feel the narrative creaking and groaning as it tries to accommodate this new addition that was never meant to be involved. Characters like Helm and his sons are sidelined to make space for her. Wolf is turned into a pathetic simp who turns a military campaign into a personal grudge against Hera for rejecting him, and if that wasn't bad enough, there's even a second girl boss who's even more girl bossy than Hera. Olwyn is a middle-aged shield maiden and a mentor to Hera who can somehow easily defeat men half her age and twice her size, takes command during battle scenes, is always portrayed as stoic, capable and resolute even as experienced lords fall to pieces around her, and somehow survives all the way to the end even when the plot runs out of things for her to do. Don't worry, no women were harmed in the making of this film. Visually, I'd describe War of the Rohirrim as impressive but uneven. The anime style lends itself surprisingly well to a larger-than-life world like Middle-earth. Some scenes are genuinely beautiful, and you can tell they used motion capture to good effect. Other times, characters look weirdly stiff and unnatural, especially during the horse riding and the battle scenes, and it creates this jarring sense that you're watching different movies all jammed together. From what I've read, more than 60 different animation companies worked on this film, and it shows. At almost 2.5 hours, it's pretty long for what it actually delivers, and the pace definitely slows towards the end as the siege drags on and not a whole lot happens. There's a meaningless cameo from Saruman and a few references to orcs being sent out from Mordor looking for rings. I wonder what that could be for. But honestly, all it did was remind me of much better films set in Middle-earth. Films that I wish I was watching right now. Ultimately, War of the Rohirrim is a brave but deeply flawed attempt to tell a story that never should have been told in the first place, from a studio that's slowly burning through the goodwill it still enjoys from the fan base, and if they've got any sense, they'll avoid any further attempts to update Tolkien for modern audiences. Anyway, that's all I've got for today. Go away now.